story for you tonight I've never, ever told before. Very few people know this story. This is not a public story. It has been a private story for 1.5 years now. It's only a year and a half old. I've never told it. There's reasons why. But this week, it's just the Spirit of the Lord began. I talked to Kathy as we were driving over about it again. Seems to say, why haven't you been my witness? I saw something and participated in something very dramatic. And so many times, people get involved with more dramatic moments in God. And I guess they immediately rush. Sometimes it feels like they immediately rush to make money off of it or to advance their ministry or, themselves. And this was so precious and so important that I just kept it to myself till this night. The people that know are just even one hand. And I've never told it publicly. It was a year and a half ago. We went to church on a Friday night, much like this night. And after the church was over, we got together with some people. And we had been there with the people for 2 or 3 minutes is all. Just a few minutes. And behind me, I was in the kitchen, and behind me, I'm looking this way, out from the kitchen, and I didn't notice anything. And by chance, I happened to turn around, and there was a person behind me that obviously had completely lost consciousness and would have fallen over, but this person's clothing caught on a drawer knob, and it was holding them up so they didn't crash to the floor. I immediately grabbed the person, swung him around, put him on the floor. Other people that were with us had not been in as many situations as I've been in, and so I'm just an action kind of person. Most people stand back and kind of get panicky a little bit, but I took action immediately, and I went and I checked this person out, and there was no breath. I couldn't find it. Diane, you're a nurse. Tammy, you're a nurse. Maybe you could have found it. But, I tried. I could find no breath. Maybe you could have found a pulse. I could find no pulse. I tried and I tried. I here and there trying to find a pulse. I could find no pulse. And so I instinctively, not being practiced up on this, you should be, but you're not. I thought, what do you do? Everybody else is kind of just watching, and I thought, I'll do this. So I decided, well, I'll do that. I'll do the what do you call that? Yeah. I knew there were some letters for it somewhere. So I started doing it. The only thing I'm trying to remember the right song. Was it the Bee Gees or was it Michael Jackson? Was it Staying Alive? Or the Michael Jackson one? Not that one. So I'm doing that, I'm doing it. I'm thinking of it, Nothing. So because that didn't work, I decided to do the other. I said, well, I've seen it on TV. I'll try to breathe life into them. So I put my mouth down. I began to breathe. I tried to think all this stuff, that you can't remember hardly. And so I did that. I did that as best I could. I went back and pumped a little bit more. Of course, I did the TV thing, call 911. I did that, and they did. I was with Pastor JD. JD was on the phone. And as I'm doing this, and he's on the phone, I could tell in the conversation on the phone, which we want to move as quick as we can, the 911 call, it was just, you could tell there was some confusion. And then a person screamed out, they're turning blue, they're turning blue. And I looked over, and sure enough, this person was blue. And I could not get any breath, I could not get a pulse, and I could not get any life. I could tell Pastor JD, and JD was fumbling a little bit, trying to explain on the phone what was going on. And since, like I said, I'm used to making decisions, and so I remembered, I knew where we were, and I remembered there's a hospital not that far away, and I thought, I'm not going to go with this confusion. If I take this, I can get him there faster. So I said, JD, pick him up, run with me. And he picked the person up and ran him to the car, and we opened the car door, and he threw it in the front seat, and I took off. I didn't wait for anybody else. I put the emergency flashers on, honked the horn, and drove as quick as I could. I stopped at a red light because I don't want to have an accident. That'd be the worst thing that could happen. And looked and went on. I just drove through everything. That person was completely slumped over in the front seat of the car, our car. So I pulled up to the hospital and stopped, and I ran out, and I ran into the emergency room. Unfortunately, when I ran in, there was nobody at the desk. I couldn't find anybody. I went to the door, which was locked. I pounded, pounded, and yelled some more. Nothing. And, that's okay. I'm fine with that because I think there were, somebody else was needing attention. They had no idea I was coming. I'm thinking next time anything happens, call ahead, But anyway, so they didn't know I was there. But I pounded. I'm getting no help. And the car is out there running. The person is in it. And so I run back as fast as I can because there were wheelchairs in the foyer entrance, and I run back and I grab a wheelchair and I run out to the parking lot with a wheelchair. And at that time, a woman was out there. She was walking and she noticed all this activity. She turned around and came back and she was watching this. And I opened up the car door and the person just kind of flopped out. Not completely, because I had strapped them in, so the seatbelt was kind of holding them, but they just flopped out. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And I remember since then I've talked to Pastor J.D., and he says, if you ever want me to, I will testify. When I ran out with that body, it was completely nothing. There was no life in that body. And so the flipped out, nothing. And so I unbuckled the seatbelt, and the only thing I could do, I thought, I got to get him in there. So I reached in, scooped him up, and threw him in the chair. And unfortunately, though, when there was no way to hold the person up, and so the person slumped forward. And so just out of natural instinct, and like I said, this lady's watching. I guess she's trying to figure out what she could do to help. But out of natural instinct, the person flopped over forward. And so I just took right here about the collarbone, and I held one hand on the wheelchair and pushed him back up. And when I pushed him back up, I felt my hand right there on that collarbone, and I just laid it there for a second. I just pushed for myself. I just gave a little push like that. And suddenly, without warning, this person's eyes popped like that. As wide as you can imagine it would be. Pop! Wide-eyed, almost terrified, wide-eyed, like, where have I been? Popped. And then the most loudest, what they say on Halloween, blood-curdling, a scream that could be heard from parking lot to parking lot. And this woman and people are looking, and this loud scream. Now, this is after church, so it's late at night, and this scream came out, and his eyes popped open. And I thought, aha. And I ran as fast as I could inside. And I got in this time, and, they took this person, put him behind, and I waited. Since that time, they never really did know what happened. It's not been conclusive what happened, mostly guesswork. And it's never been concluded how that moment in the parking lot where before there was nothing. So when I got there, here's the amazing thing. I guess our nurses, there's more nurses than two here, but I could see them. I don't know what you would do. But the first thing they did when I walked in is they asked me, how long were they out? And I had to think for a second, and so I knew kind of from my watch like that, and I looked at my watch and I said, it had to be 15 or 20 minutes unconscious. And I don't know what that means exactly. I only could read their faces. You're really a borderline situation here. So they said, how long was this person out? And I said, they were out for 15 or 20 minutes. By the time from the kitchen to the car to the drive to the wheelchair to the, it was a prayer sort of, but it was more just a release to the scream to the wheeling in. I looked, and I tried to remember. It was either 15-ish to 20 minutes completely gone. And suddenly in that parking lot, I slammed my hand down just like that, and wham! And the person came awake. Well, after that, a little time passed, and that person walked up to me, and it didn't cross my mind like this. That person walked up to me and said, "You brought me back to life." Now, naturally, I didn't go into a theological explanation that I have no power to bring back to life. Wasn't the point. The point was not to say this person thought I had the power to bring somebody back to life. The point of it was I was the person that was there and worked and prayed and tried. And I can't take any responsibility for it because I was just as confused as everybody else was. What happened? This person was just fine before. And no sign of anything, and we're just talking. And so he said, "You brought me back to life." And when that was said to me, that's when I knew someday I would tell you the story. The other interesting thing about telling this story tonight, why it's so appropriate, because that person's here with us tonight. It was Pastor Kathy Gray. Fell over for 20 minutes unconscious. She preached that Friday night, and we left together, and before we could get 3 minutes in the house, she was out. My daughter was there, JD was there, my grandchildren were there. Allie did pretty good with it, but little Matt was just traumatized to watch what he saw. It was very, very dramatic and difficult.